I'm David Lord, the host of the Insight series of podcasts from HR Resource. These are a series of podcasts that are all about the business of business. And we meet some absolutely fascinating individuals who've got stories to tell that you're just going to want to hear. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome to the Insight from HR Resource podcast today, a force of fashion and design in the UK, as we've not seen before. Wayne Hemingway is a man that everybody will probably know by name and by face. He's certainly been on our TVs, he's been on our radio, he's been with us since the early 80s and all the way through to something I caught earlier today, which was the Eden Project festival, and he was talking about slow fashion. The man never stops. So I'm delighted he's taken a pause to have a conversation with me today. Welcome, Wayne.
Hiya.
Good to see you. Actually, today it's an interesting one for me. This is going to show you my geekiness, a bit of number wang for you. Today is actually palindromic, because obviously the date is can be read from either end. And still.
Oh yes, I'm just looking on my bottom corner of the computer, and it's right.
And actually, your birth date, not that we need to share it with anybody, but your birth date is a thing called a strobogrammatic date.
Go on, you have to explain that, and I'm going to write that down. I've not heard.
Strobogrammatic, Wayne, is
strobogrammatic.
Yeah. If you turn out,
what does that mean? I'm writing down my birth date, which is 190161. Or do you have to put 19?
19161.
19161.
Turn it upside down, and it's the same upside down.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's one of those.
Yeah. But it would also be the same if you did 190161.
Yeah.
So that was my daughter, eldest daughter, popping in to tell me that she's just fed the dogs.
Oh, all important information.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many dogs have you got?
Oh, well, she's round with us, and she's brought her dog.
Okay.
And my dog, which makes two, but I've only got one. Yeah.
One's enough for us as well. So let's start from just after that strobogrammatic moment in time, and look at early life for you. You were born in the northwest of England in Morecambe, and what can you remember? What was your first memory as a child?
Memories are of Morkum being a very exciting place, just full of life. I remember things like Glasgow Week, when hordes, tens of thousands of Glaswegians would come down and fill the prom with dance and laughter and music and just vibrancy. I remember the beaches being packed. I remember the super swimming pool, the big 1930s Lido, and the Midland Hotel where I was conceived, but that's probably too much information. I remember the Winter Gardens where I was encouraged to perform by my mum and my nan, and I remember fishing on the pier with. Hang on.
Let's just rewind. You were forced to perform, but let's just look at that. What do they do?
Well, they just encouraged me to be in. I remember I've got pictures of myself in The King and I, and on stage at a bandstand next to the stone jetty, and forced is probably a strong word, but encouraged probably. And I must have. I seem to be smiling on them anyway. So
you must have enjoyed it. And so life growing up in Morecambe in the 60s was good fun.
It was great fun, and there was never a dull moment. My nan had a B&B, bed and breakfast, so. Yeah. There was always people visiting, and that I think that when you're young, that gives you a certain confidence of how to talk to people, and to get on with people, and
lots of different people interacting with them.
Yeah, and my father left when I was 3, so but my mum could never afford to live on her own with me, so lived with her mum and dad, my nan and pop, and so that itself was a lively household with 3 generations, and my mum always making her own clothes, my nan always making her own clothes, my pop always making things, and the dog out here always yapping like my nan's dogs, like my nan's dogs always did.
It's home from home. So just you touched on your father there, which Ian himself. I don't want to talk too much about this, but at what stage did it dawn on you that he was the character that he obviously is? Were you aware much later in life, or was it?
I was later in life, because when your father leaves at 3, you don't obviously, none of it, not much of us remember anything that young.
No.
I think I've only got one memory of being with him. I think I can remember one spot. It's not a photo, so it must be a memory. I haven't got a photo of it. So, but that's my only memory of it. All my memory are of the family that my nana, my papa, my mum. Yeah, I mean, and also it's one of those things that when you've got a father that was as famous as mine and as unusual, to have an old money Red Indian, and today it's First Nation. You
First Nation Mohawk.
Yeah. To have in those days what was called a Red Indian, and being a heavyweight wrestling champion of the world, as your father was, number one, number one, I think it was hidden more than anything, because the idea of having a child out of wedlock and also. Yeah, and he ran off and everything. It was just 1 second while I go and open a door to stop that dog yapping, or else it'll spoil for everybody's listening. So hang on a second. Of course, it wouldn't be my dog yapping. It was my daughter's dog.
Of course, yeah.
It was much naughtier. Mine sat there on a bed, being very well behaved.
What breed of yapper was that?
They're both Springer Doors, so they look like Labradors, but they've got Springer Spaniel.
Oh God!
Half Springer Spaniel.
I've had a Springer Spaniel. They're quite crazy.
Yeah, they're good fun and very, very good family dogs. Yeah. Very good family dogs. Yeah.
So yeah, we were just talking about the experience of Billy.
Yeah. So when your father is that famous, and with it being, I think at the times, the 60s, you didn't really talk about splits and born out of wedlock and all of that, because and so I grew up and there was hardly any talk of my father at all, and I don't even remember asking much about where my father was. I don't remember ever thinking that I didn't have I didn't have a father present, because my granddad.
You had a father figure in the household.
Yeah, he was there, and he was a great sportsman. He taught me how to play cricket, football. We went fishing and digging bait together, and all the pictures of me with an older male when I was young, with my granddad with a cricket bat in his hand or a football at his feet, and he was looking at him. He looked young and fit and all of that lot. So I didn't. Yeah, it's one of those things that I had my father figure. He was there.
And I think your mum might have been responsible for some of this passion you've got for music.
Yeah, my mum always. Yeah, my mum always. Well, number one, she had a good record collection. Number two, she was a nightclubber. In all the coolest bars, making her own clothes all the time and going out. And number three, she took me to see bands like Sweet and Slade and things like that when I was 9 and 10 years old. And
10 years old and you sing Sweet.
Yeah, and
a blonde bombshell of a lead singer. I remember.
Yeah, and then she was, I went to see David Bowie at the age of 11 on my own, or with other friends.
That's crazy.
And then she was totally happy for me to. By the age of 13, I was going to all-nighters at Wigan Casino, Northern Soul Nights, and by 14, going to mixed gay and straight disco nights at the Highland Room in Blackpool, and staying out. So I'd go to Blackpool, get on a coach to Wigan at 2 o'clock in the morning, 1:45, 2 o'clock in the morning, go to Wigan to the all-nighter, and not get home till 10 or 11 the next day, and then go out again Sunday night. And I was 14 years old, and she never batted an eyelid, just, and I think I always encourage my kids to nightclub and things, and it was, I'd say that was the making of me, really.
So going into the nightclubs, and I'm guessing this is the Northern Soul, the Wigan Casino, the height of that movement at the time. A lot of Motown music that had evolved into this dance craze. So what was the pull for you for there? Was it the music?
Was the music.
Was it the girls?
Strangely enough, there was so Wigan was not about girls. Wigan was two things. I think the music became a religion, and the dancing became a religion. Anybody that knows Northern Soul, it's very distinct kind of music, and it just became, it was always underground. There's still an underground scene for it now.
I still see TikToks from Stockport of this.
Yeah.
Regular one going. That's incredible.
Yeah, so it's still going on, and there's a new generation coming through. But it is about the music. There was a lot of drugs. I never took them. It was quite a druggy scene. But that was people. That was speed and amphetamine to stay awake all night. But I never bothered with,
because it became quite an energetic dance as well. I mean, it sort of to start off with, very, very sort of rhythmic, and then it developed into something which sort of morphed into breakdancing, didn't it?
But as a lot of the Northern Soul people moved on to disco, as disco started in around about 75, and that became much more about fashion, and looking to New York, and certainly copping off, as we say in Lancashire, became part of the disco scene. So it was a very mixed scene in terms of gay and straight, and certainly girls were a big part of the disco scene. But then I got into punk as well, and as a lot of people did who were into the disco and the Northern Soul scene. So we were, going to see the Buzzcocks. Well, for me, it was more the northern groups like Buzzcocks and Slaughter and the Dogs, and although the Pistols did see the Pistols at the Lodestar in Blackburn in '76, but we were punks who were, one night a week listening to Roxy and Bowie, another night,
I love it,
being punks, and then often on Saturday night, still being really into New York disco, and there was that clash of disco and punk that was really exciting, because it was fashion, it was glam, but it was hardcore, and it was just brilliant. It was just, I don't think there's ever been a time like it, and it's easy to look at today. I mean, I still think young people today can have as much fun as we did, but in terms of the speed that things were moving, and the
variety,
and the newness to everything, because all of this was so new. Dance music and the BPMs that were coming out of dance music, which are still around today, it was all so fresh. And the idea that you could form a band and have no musical ability to an extent, but learn on the job, like punk was about, and you could do the graphics and for a punk leaflet, for a band leaflet, with no training whatsoever. That was all really new, and it just felt like it was a new world all around us.
And touch on this on Northern Soul and other dancing and nightclubbing. Obviously, there's a lot of dancing going on. I'm guessing that, given what I know about you, Wayne, you're not somebody that necessarily wants to put themselves forward for Strictly, but have you been asked?
I have actually been asked for
Strictly. I thought you might have been.
But it is just far too...
It's not your scene.
It's just not, I mean, I've done television, and and I get asked to do television a lot, and there's not much point in me doing it unless... I don't believe in doing things unless there's a purpose, and it's going to give you either enjoyment that you want to do, or it's going to give you just something that's important. So that was never going to give me enjoyment, because the idea of being... there was a time when I did a lot of television, and when you're being stopped all the time, and being spoken to, and having to spend time being nice back, which you have to do, and that's the right thing to do. You either like that or you don't, and you just want to get on with your life and not be interrupted really by people you don't know. And that might sound selfish, but so I quickly realized when I was on telly too much, because I was being spoken to too much by people I didn't know. So that's when I kind of thought, right, scale that down. But there was a recent I did go on the one mass market television. I'm always getting asked, and the more you say no, the more you get asked, because I don't know why, but it's just because you're a name.
Value goes up the less.
But also because they must be running out of people who are interesting who can go on some of these programs. So they ask, they keep asking you. But I did go on one which was the Great British Menu. And the reason I went, which was earlier this year, and which is obviously a mass market program, and the reason I went on it was completely and utterly out of mischief to wind up my kids who say that I am, who you know, say I'm the anti of being a foodie, you know, that because you know they're all into food and can cook really well, and you know, vegans and vegetarians as I am, but my idea is just throwing all leftovers into a pan with a bit of chili oil and mixing it all up and putting it up between two slices of bread. You know, that's my dream. That's
how my son.
Yeah. I'm still like a student way of eating. So I thought I'd go on.
He's quite exotic. He uses all that, but you know, it's the same idea.
So I was asked to go, when I was asked to go on the Great British Menu, I didn't tell them till the day of the program and said, watch television tonight. And it was like all hell let loose in the house, you know.
I bet they couldn't believe it.
No, they were, and yeah. They thought I was going to show myself up, but I don't think I did.
Yeah, good stuff. So, just touching back on, we'll spend a bit more on your younger life, but I understand you got a scholarship to grammar schools. Obviously,
yeah. So
Wayne had a brain.
Yeah, I mean,
quite a clever lad.
I owe an awful lot to that, and I owe an awful lot to Blackburn Council because I'd moved to Blackburn by then, because we didn't have any money, and part of our time there living in social housing, not all of the time in Blackburn. If you were from below a certain income levels, you could take an 11+ type exam to go to Queen Elizabeth Queen Elizabeth Grammar School, and I think it was 2 every year got a 100% scholarship, so you didn't pay anything to go to a really, really good school, but also a very balanced, very sporty, and very not like you wouldn't get anything like Eton, would you, in Blackburn anyway? So you remember where this was? It's Blackburn, but it was still a very good grammar school.
But it would be an aspirational school for
the one that I could never have gone to it without, you know, there's no way Mum and Nan or my mum could have afforded to pay for it. So anyway, I got there and did well at school and enjoyed it, and then, you know, that gave me the education to go to any university I wanted to, including Oxford. You know, I got through to Oxford and Cambridge, got offers from them, and but I knew I only wanted to go to London. That's the only place I wanted to go if I was going to go to university. So I got to UCL, but again, got paid because of my background, got paid to go to university, everything paid, and £90 a week to live off every week. So
my daughter's incredibly jealous.
Yeah, so it was and I was able to, in London, straight away form a band, a second band, and then obviously the Camden Market story of starting on Camden Market. And
we can't really talk about passion without of the obvious point of passion, which is, you know, your personal life and your passions in your career. And we can't go very far without talking about Gerardine and the influence on your life. And obviously she has been a huge factor in the success.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't have, everything like Red or Dead and onto Hemingway Design wouldn't have happened without a meeting of minds.
Yeah.
And that's often, you know, that's not that unusual. There's only so much you can do on your own, and when you get two people with complementary skills and a different approach to life to an extent, it can really, really work. And you know, we met in a disco when we were young, as you would expect, where two people from Blackburn and Burnley at the time would meet. It would be in a disco, because that was life. And then the fact that she'd left school at 15 with no qualifications, but had this passion for having enough money to go out dancing by making clothes, and you know, and working really hard in the job that she had as a wages clerk. That was the cat, and I'd always, you know, just passed down from me from my nan and my mum this. If you see pictures of my mum and nan, just how fashionable they were and how good clothes, the clothes that they made were amazing. So both of us coming from that background, and both of us obsessed with music. You know, that was when we got married, and Gerardine, well, we lived together before we got married. So when she moved in, she brought her record collection. There were some records that we both had, both with our initials on it. You know, we bought the same records. We'd met dancing to a record that we'd both just bought, and so, you know, bringing all that together, the love of music, the understanding of fashion and nightlife and clubbing and all of that, and it was, we never planned to start a business, and you know, that was just emptying our wardrobes onto Camden because we needed the money. But
innovation out of necessity.
Yeah, and that, but it never felt that hard to create a fashion industry, to create a fashion business without knowing about the industry, because it's what we did. Our weekends, well, more than weekends, it was so many nights a week. We lived to dress up. It sounds shallow, but we lived to dress up, to go out dancing, to listen to music, and we knew it. We lived it. So it wasn't that hard to create a business around that, really. And the second-hand side of it, because I'd always worn second-hand clothes from the age of 13, because never having any money, but knowing how to make those second-hand clothes work and adapt them or whatever on a sewing machine and all of that, like everything was just like, well, this is what we do.
You were way ahead of the trend. That was just...
Well, that was in the 70s, you know, yeah. But I wasn't the only one doing it. You know, it was just, yeah, now it's tipped over into mass market-ish.
And I do know that today you're wearing something which is, well, actually a couple of pieces of item that we can see. We won't get into what I do know that you weren't telling the truth actually in the Eden Project Festival, where you were talking about what you're wearing below. But obviously what you're wearing here is a fascinating shirt with a history.
Yeah, but well, both of these are items that. So when we did Camden Market, and I was out going to every jumble sale, every second-hand shop, every auction that we could find, every recycling yard all around the country, we were the first ones to do it on a major scale. Everything that was amazing that fitted me went into my wardrobe, and you should see how many wardrobes I've got and how many. Everything that was mint condition from the 60s or the 50s that was absolutely beautiful and fitted me, and I've got so many things that I rotate them. So this is a beautiful condition 1950s, could be 40s actually.
Wow.
Could be 40s really, collarless shirt, probably more likely 40s. But you know, I've probably only worn it 10 times, no, maybe more than 20 times since I got it, which I got it in around 1982, so it's 40 years old. Right. I've probably only worn it once every 3 or 4 years because I've got another 50 like them, stacked up like that.
So it's on a rotational basis.
Yeah, and like this is the most beautiful cord and tweed waistcoat from mod era in 1960s. And again, I've probably only worn it 30, 40 times, but I've had it since about 1983, 1984, because I've got loads of I've got so many good clothes because I was buying them all from recycling yards at 10p each, and just kept the best stuff.
Tremendous. I have this cull that has recently happened to me. Occasionally, we've just downsized to a 1950s house that we've got here that we're going to be doing up.
I can see by your crystal window. Are they crystal windows?
No, they don't talk about the windows. We're getting them changed. We're getting them changed.
Is that UPVC?
Yeah, that's horrible. It's gross. The first thing we're doing is getting rid. So
from a distance, it looks like it might be metal, but they're not.
No. But it is in structural terms. It's a 1950s, and as you walk into the kitchen, you are stepping back in time. So talking about TV shows, you could do that show where they cook and they pretend to be back in the time. Right. Yeah, we actually.
Well, mid-century is all the trend right now. Yeah, my youngest daughter been working for many years at this thing called the Modern House, which a website that just deals in the kind of mainly in the kind of housing that you're talking about, and it's ever so successful.
I heard a comedy skit once about a guy that was looking into his wardrobe, and he was being threatened by his partner to sort of like cut down his clothes, and he treated it like a football team, and it was like football players getting cut. It was like, and it was the personalities to all the shirts, like the flash one, and I'm there with my.
Yeah, I've got way too many clothes. You know, I probably could wear something different every day till I died now, and that wouldn't be a problem. But the good thing is most of it, the vast majority of it was secondhand when I got it. I can actually say that I've not contributed to, I do live the circular economy in many, many ways, and I've always done it.
Yeah, very healthy. We talked very, very quickly there about the very early sort of seedling starts of Red or Dead, this amazing brand that grew in the early 80s. And from this trading in secondhand clothing and the markets, working on Camden Market. So you grew that from the smallest of beginnings, from a market stall all the way up to a multi-million-pound.
Yeah, well, Gerardine got a stall in Kensington Market. Some people look it up. For people who don't know what it is, look it up. It was the retail centre of retail culture, indie culture, underground culture. If not, certainly in Britain, maybe in the world. And people came from all around the world to it. And hence we got an order, Gerardine got an order from Macy's New York, just after she'd started, weeks after she'd started.
Wow.
My mum, it's a very, there's a film to do in this, I suppose, but in very short, my mum, who was working in a pub in Blackburn, gave up most of that work to set up a factory, employ people, buy the machinery with our money from Camden, and make this order for Macy's. Wow. And various family members, Gerardine's sisters, everybody helping out with bits and bats. And we created Red or Dead that way on the back of this big order. And before we knew it, well, over the next few years, it grew to 23 shops around the world, 25 million turnover, 300 odd staff, designers of the year for 3 years on a row. All without employing anybody who'd got training, or just our friends and our nightclub mates, and mainly, and never really bothering about any kind of business plans, just getting on and doing it. And then eventually we sold it 17 years after starting it.
Yeah.
17 or 18 years after we started it, and formed Hemingway Design.
So was that part of an overall plan, or was it just that?
No, never made plans.
No.
Because for no reason. No, it's just like we've just got on with life, and we didn't plan to have 4 kids, but it
happens.
It happens, and obviously we did things to make sure we didn't have 40 kids, but I don't know, it was just because life was, the markets, we never planned the markets, but it was a really big success. We never planned Red or Dead, but it was a really big success, and you're learning all the time, and it's exciting when you don't have any preconceptions of what things are going to be. It's really exciting, and we just let things.
It's got a rider on there, isn't it?
Yeah, we just let things evolve and see where it was going to go next, and I think we've always been like that. And when we sold it, it was for change. Yes, it was nice to have the security after you've been doing something for that long. Change is important, and freshness. But we could have carried on Red or Dead, and we probably could have we're wealthy, but we could have probably got stinking. But you don't need to be stinking rich, If you were looking at the growth of a business, you would not have sold it at that point. You just wouldn't have sold it at that point if you were looking to get so rich that you could, I don't know, buy your yachts and all of that kind of stuff. But we knew it was the right time to get enough million in the bank to give us a security.
Life-changing. It's life-changing money.
It was life-changing money, without a doubt. Yeah. But it wasn't putting you in a position where you just was a filling
rockets into space type money.
Yeah, yeah. But it gave us the chance to try another route. With Red or Dead was always purposeful. It was always at the cutting edge. It was always thinking about societal benefit and making clothes in prisons to working with Greenpeace. But we felt we could do more. Fashion was restricting in that respect. It was, you could only do so much, and with our political views and everything, we just felt that we could do more outside of fashion, and it's proved right. We did it at the right time, and you know, now we've spent longer doing Hemingway Design than we did Red or Dead.
Yes, I was going to say that one thing I was going to mention, because I do have a memory of my daughter and a friend Fran coming home from I don't know whether it was Specsavers at the time, but the opticians, with a pair of Red or Dead framed glasses, and they're being so excited about it because of the brand, what it meant, what it stood for. So obviously, when you get to a point where a brand is evolving into so many different products and types and things as well, I think it might have been slightly after you'd sold it, but I guess there's an element of where's this going? You know, where's the core of what we had, and
yeah,
lost its direction a little bit. It's not what you originally intended.
Well, it never lost its direction under us. It was like, anything that would take us off that path of being independent, cutting edge, purposeful. Our values were never allowed to be stretched by Red or Dead. But when you sell it, you have to be prepared to see what Gerardine always called our baby.
Your fifth child.
Yeah, the fifth child, which she did. That's what she described it as. You have to be prepared to see it being bastardized to an extent, and the new owners did, you know, and they
monetize the brand.
Yeah, and that was the way that they did things, and that was that. And you know, now you look. If I look, I very rarely see Red or Dead. It's still in existence, and you know. But when I look at the product now, it's nothing to do with us. When I look at the marketing, it's nothing to do with us. And in a way, you look at that and think, what a shame, because it had such power, it had such following.
Would work with your stewardship now, and in terms of living the brand, you know, the personification of what, you know, Gen Z and younger millennials are absolutely following.
Yeah, if they'd have only kept it true to its values, but you can't go back after you've suddenly gone cheesy and just forgot about everything that. But that's often the case. You see it, you know, look what's happening to Leon at the moment. I don't, you know,
yeah.
You know, it was such a brilliant fast food chain.
Loved it, absolutely loved it.
And the last few months, it's just, things can happen so quick, so quick if you lose the passion of what the brand is about, and you see it all of the time. It's just everywhere it happens. Yeah. But you just have to move on and forget about. Because there's nothing you can do about it. You know, it does sadden me when I see it, but then what, for 5 minutes?
Yeah,
that's all.
You're a busy man, because you've got Hemingway Design. Over 20 years, you've been working on a number of amazing projects. What would you say in that time has stood out for you, sort of making a difference, the big projects?
Well, I think in terms of one of the first ones that we did on a large scale was the State South Bank. It was 760 homes on a brownfield site, working with Wimpy Homes. The story behind
this is Gateshead.
Gateshead, yeah. And the story of that is well known. I won't tell it here. If people look up the story, go on the Hemingway Design website and look at the stakes, they'll see that we had an impact on an industry that we were really critical of. We're still critical of it today, but that was our first big inroads into change. And we've created, mainly Gerardine on that one, created a development that has made thousands of people happy. It's, you know, 2,500 people live there. It's a real community. It changed quite a lot of the direction of the housing industry. It showed that something was possible, and to make money that was community focused, that had individuality about it, that had thought about it, that had a different way of living, that gave people a chance to open shops and cafes, that just took a brownfield site and did what you should do without building high-rise flats and making it impersonal. So it's won every award that a housing development can win. But more than that, when we go back there, people come out, and you don't need people to do it, but it's so nice when people with something as important as a house don't come out and tell you this place is falling to bits, but come out and say thank you. And And you can't ask for more than that from designing something.
You don't get that sort of conversation with most property developers.
No, and it's enabled us to go on. Now we're working with St Modwyn, a developer, who are becoming increasingly purposeful and thinking about, and a number of our team are really excited about the direction of travel of that project. Working and we've delivered other housing estates with independents in Blackburn, and so that's given us that. And I suppose that's really important to us. The event side of things is very big with Hemingway Design. Placemaking events, big public free events like the festival, Thrift Festival, Making, First Light, Vintage by the Sea, and the stuff that we do in London with the big developers like in Greenwich, like Urban Village Fate, and with Argent in King's Cross, like the Classic Car Boot Sale. All of those giving fun to people at usually no cost, but also giving startup opportunities, bringing tens of thousands of people and giving startup opportunities to young designers and young food producers and young musicians and DJs. All of that, I'm so proud. I'm so proud of what we've all achieved, and what the young Hemingway Design team.
That must have been quite hard during the pandemic. So how did you adapt to that?
Well, obviously there was no events during the pandemic, but we knew it when we came out of it. We wanted to be ready. Yeah. So we were developing new ideas, and and we also knew we also do a lot of town centre regeneration and coastal regeneration. So the team, and because we're multidisciplinary, and because they're not just a team of people who have learned to do events, but they are, even if they haven't studied human geographers, they're human geographers. They know about people and place and society and how to make this world, to try and make this world a better place. So they can switch their skills, that all the team can switch their skills to something else. I'm really proud of ideas that we come up with, like the Good Business Festival, celebrating purpose, and the profit comes from purpose. I'm really proud of a new idea we're going to be delivering in Salford, and it's just, there's so much to be pleased about Hemingway Design at the moment. And more than anything, it's the fact that it's in good hands. There are a lot of young people here who share what me and Gerardine have always shared.
And I think it's as an organization, you now find with 3 children who are 22, 25, 27, I've experienced the way that they've looked at the place of work, and they look to work with organizations that are going to look after them, that have got ethical approach to life, that are keen to be able to promote and train and develop they have a much clearer view of things than I had. I mean, it was about what am I going to get paid and my job title, and where I was going to, a typical sort of corporate journey. But the generation now are so much smarter. I can't wait till they all get into power and they start running the country. Very encouraged by the younger generation.
Well, if they're allowed to get into power, there's some. Let's not go on about that. No. I mean, the way that politics is being shifted, and the way that people vote at the moment, and the closed shop that is, I think democracy in this country is a bit threatened at the moment. Yeah. But we won't go into that.
I agree 100%. Just looking at and I'm going to take a little small rewind, but the phrase that you made, which on a train journey up and down the country, this thing comes into my mind, which we talk about the wimpification and the Barrettification of the country, and it's always bothered me. And I was listening to a program on Radio 4 the other night, and it was termed "No Ball Games Allowed," and it was the talk about the Breckentree housing estate near Dagenham, where there's 27,000 council houses.
I know that estate really, really well. We're working.
Oh, you do. It's sort of iconic, movement of the government at the time to be able to move out of the slums of the East End of London and bring 100,000 people together under all these houses. And obviously they've seen a lot of change and a lot of things happen to them over the time. But I'm just wondering about how would, if such a project was going to be put in place now, how would we go about it? Would we do the same thing again? I suspect not.
Well, no, the Breckentree estate is not all bad at all. It's got really a lot of very positive things about it, and when you look back at the history of it, there was a very strong community there, and there certainly wouldn't have been signs up saying no ball games. Those spaces were put there for kids to play in. and kids did play in them. So the history is of that estate.
The original intent and everything was
the original intent was giving working class people a better place, still within reach of East London. You know, it still is East London, but successive councils and governments didn't maintain the quality. Like a lot of housing estates that end up becoming called sink estates or, you know, ghettos. It's partly as a result of mistakes that have been made after. Not some have been designed terribly from the beginning. There are examples of that where it's been a Brave New World approach that was clearly not right. You know, I genuinely believe that packing loads of high-rise flats together and not giving people a choice whether they are living high-rise or whether they're living in a home, in a house with access to ground level was wrong in many respects. I don't think that all high-rise is wrong, because I think there should be choice, and if some people do enjoy it. But I would say the majority of housing estates, which ultimately became troubled in many ways, were not bad when they were built. But we are not brilliant in this country at. We're very good at doing well. We've done that. Let's leave it alone from then on. But nothing can be left alone. You have to constantly improve with everything. Your life, your thinking. Housing estates are just the same as you'd service your car.
Yeah.
You go for a health checkup. You go to the dentist. Everything needs. But sometimes these things just get left and forgotten about, thinking the job's done when the developer moves away. And the developers are often to blame. Yeah. You know, they can't wait. Modern day developers often can't wait to get off site, leave it in the hands of a rubbish management company, and just disappear to the builders. And so we have got, you know.
I've had some experience of what you're touching on there with working with law firms and land values and what they've done to the country in terms of agricultural land. I've written a lot about that. In fact, we've just done our website. We're just gradually putting back on the blog. So if anybody wants to visit, you'll see blogs gradually going back on about. How can people? Let me ask to give a shout out for how people can find out more information from your website.
Yeah, HemingwayDesign.co.uk, and then we're reasonably active on. Our newsletters are informative, and we don't just talk about ourselves. We talk about things that are interesting. The same thing on all our social media channels. It's not just about us. If we see a good young designer, or if we see a good initiative, we talk about it. So. We have a big. I think we've got about 250,000 people following us across our various channels. So we must be doing more than talk about ourselves. So if you like what we stand for, then sign up. Don't cost out.
Yeah, and the land value thing is something that is a debate that will go on, and I think it needs to change to be able to put a little bit more back into thinking about way things and developments are structured more strategically. Moving on from that and drawing things to a close, I appreciate you giving me and giving the podcast a good chunk of your time today. Just a piece of advice, given you're somebody who's worked in a partnership very closely and very successfully over a number of years. I've worked with couples, and I'm married, and I'm in a relationship myself with a wife. We're very different. We work well together. But what advice might you give to couples who are starting out in business together to make sure that they stay on the right side of each other and don't fall out?
Well, you've got to have a shared passion for what you're doing. I think I've seen businesses where it's been one person's idea and the other person has been kind of co-opted in, or feel that they need to be co-opted in. So I think if it can be a shared passion and also complementary skills, you don't both want to be doing the same thing. You know, Gerardine has always been better at the detail and the seeing it, making sure that a vision doesn't slip off its course. I've always been very good at recognizing opportunity and having that often unrealistic idea. But Gerardine looks at things very objectively, and I think I'm glass half full and Gerardine can be glass half empty, and that's not a negative thing. But when you bring those together, I think you get a full glass. in a business.
Resonates.
You know, and you've just, you know, yeah, I mean, we both, the great thing is we don't do the same thing and we don't think the same way all the time. You know, yes, it's obviously a meeting of minds to have a business all these years that works, but it's not all sweetness and light where everything, oh yeah, I agree with that, yeah, you're right, yeah, oh yes, love, you know, it's just not like that.
Yeah. High level of trust, but also and respect to the point where you can disagree with each other, and
we disagree with each other all the time. But you know, that's what's made the business work. The fact that we've questioned each other. It's rather than disagree, we've questioned each other all the way through, but we've pushed each other as well. You know, and
helps to make good decisions.
Yeah, and then when our eldest kids came into the business, that's the same. You know, it's not, they don't work for us. They've never worked for us. We work together, and they've got a fresh eye on things, and they, you know, they're 30 odd, the oldest two now, mid-30s, so they don't mince their words either of us about if they feel that something's wrong.
Yeah.
But we can all do that and still respect each other. There's, you know, because you've got to, if you're really good and your views are really, really valid, then they're good and they're valid. And so that's the key to it, really, in the knowledge that the family, the people in the family, and the people well, it's not just the family, it's the business as well. We only employ people whose views we actually respect and will listen. If they're not good enough to have a point of view, if they haven't got a point of view that can move the business forward and in any way, whether it's to do with purpose, whether it's to do with sourcing, whether it's to do with design or whatever, then they're not contributing. So everybody contributes, and that means that, you know, you have your disagreements, but it's all for the right reason.
Yeah, because I think that's a very good point to draw things in with. If you know what your contribution is to the business and you feel like you've got a voice, you're motivated to participate and to be active and to do your very best. I think that's a good ethos. Wayne, you have given us a good chunk of time. It's been wonderful to talk to you. Great insights, obviously great passion. More power to you. And although you won't be winning Strictly anytime soon, I'm sure you'd take it a good steady to part. Hope we do see plenty of you in the right sense, and enjoy your weekend.
All right, same to you. Yeah, cheers.